You've been saying you want to start a podcast, so this is your sign to stop overthinking it and finally get moving. As the producer and host of the As Told By podcast, now in its 7th season with close to 100 episodes, I'm hosting an intimate, in-person podcast workshop in Oakland designed for people who are ready to finally understand the process behind getting started. This workshop isn't about going viral and monetization. It's about debunking myths, building systems for success, answering the questions that keep people stuck, and helping you create a realistic path forward for your voice and your ideas. We'll even be building a mini podcast episode together featuring audience members so you can experience the process from start to finish. Join me on Sunday, June 7th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Click the link in the show notes for registration details. I'm Kahja Elliott, and I'm a food enthusiast. Bronx born and raised, ATL made, Bay Area becoming. And I talk to people about how they create community through food in the Bay and beyond. Welcome to the As Told By podcast. Welcome back to a new episode of the As Told By podcast. I'm here in Oakland today at a long-standing fixture of the Oakland restaurant community, serving traditional Ethiopian dishes in the Bay for over 3 decades. They expanded in 2017 to include Brundo Spice Company, bringing high-quality, authentic heirloom spices and traditional Ethiopian flavors to the masses. They also were recently named number 82 on the San Francisco Chronicle's list of the top 100 restaurants in the Bay. I'm here with the general manager of one of the most loved restaurants in Oakland, Cafe Colucci. Welcome, Daniel, Aderaw, Yeshiwas, to the As Told By podcast.
Thank you.
We've been working on this for a minute. I kept saying, I got to get y'all on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. And you got the up-to-date Chronicle information.
Listen, I like that they're releasing the list in 2 parts. So, half came out. At the time this airs, the other half will have been out. But as we record, we don't know who 50 through number 1 is going to be.
Correct.
Yeah. Even though, there's so many restaurants in the Bay, to be on a top 100 list, everybody's number 1.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So congrats to you.
Thank you. Yeah, agreed. That's like just being on the list is a big thing. And I like the way they kind of rank the restaurants. I mean, I think ranking restaurants it's a big feat.
Mm-hmm.
It's like challenging, but they're going for vibe, kind of aesthetic, for food. Like this is kind of like more holistic approach to what they feel like the top 100 is. So.
Yeah. Well, look, shout out to y'all for being on the list. I noticed, I want to say y'all were up of 3 spots from last year. I want to say last year you were 85, according to what the Chronicle listed. You were 85. Oh, 86?
Yeah.
Now you're 82.
I'm up 4.
Come on now.
Yeah.
Progress.
It's funny because, like you mentioned, like they start at 100, so I'm like happy to be on the list regardless, but I was like, I hope I'm not lower than I was last year. And then we're like scrolling, and I'm like, oh, yes.
I moved up. All right, let's jump in. Cafe Colucci has been around for quite some time, but I always, when I'm researching people, even if, this is a place where I've dined quite a few times, but there's still things I don't know because I did not know that at its origins, it was an Italian cafe. That answered questions to me because there was like 1 or 2 times I was like, Colucci and Ethiopian don't seem like it goes together, but that's because the origins was an Italian cafe.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a fun beginning story. I think one, obviously there's a connection between Italy and Ethiopia because Italy attempted to colonize Ethiopia at one point, didn't actually succeed in colonizing the country. But there was some influence there. I think some early influences of like cafe culture, like espresso culture. Ethiopia had the coffee beans, but Italy coming through and bringing in this kind of like concept of cafes. And I feel like that was maybe one of the first examples of some modern capitalism that Ethiopia experienced. So there is this thing where a lot of Ethiopian restaurants are just called cafe something. Even if they're not actually cafes, they're like full service restaurants. So it's fun. There's a few in the Bay that are like Cafe Romanat, like Cafe Irja. Like they're always, we just think cafes are like restaurants.
I did not know this. I know other people didn't know this too. And we're here in the restaurant. It's a dynamic space. I love the sounds of, the place coming to life in preparation for dinner service later. So that sound you hear is the injera being mixed.
Being mixed, yeah. We make Right around, on a weekday, around 800, on the weekends up to 1,000. So it's an
Loving it.
all-day process. We're making injera all day, fresh every day.
Fresh. Okay. So I didn't know that history of Italy and Ethiopia. Let's stay with the history a bit because I always am interested in the migration story of how populations end up in particular states. So I know when I think of East Africans, of course, we think of Minnesota, Bay Area. I didn't realize until I lived here for some time. This is going to be my 12th year here. The population of East Africans here. So tell me a little bit about the history of how East Africans decided the Bay Area would be one of the places where they would kind of put down roots.
Yeah, I always ask my parents this question. I feel like it's because the terrain and climate are kind of similar. Like the weather is it's a bit hotter in Ethiopia and a bit more temperamental, but the landscape, the like hills, the mountains, I was like, it kind of feels like somewhere in the continental U.S. It feels similar to probably what Ethiopia felt like for a lot of people. But that's a thought on my end. But for my parents, and I think a lot of my elders who came here in that early wave in like the 70s and the 80s, there was stuff going on in Ethiopia. So people are leaving the country. They're settling roots in some places. And yeah, definitely the Bay Area was a strong moment for that. So, people started coming here and the first thing they do were opening up some restaurants. And so that kind of ties into the story of the founder, Fetlework Tefferi, who was actually a banker and opened up this like Afrocentric nightclub on University. It was actually on the bottom floor of the Ramada. The hotel's still there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And like the bottom space is still there. I don't think it's actually been occupied since, but yeah, the story begins where she just had this like kind of nightclub and she had all these artists that used to come in the 80s, Ethiopian artists, some of the first artists to perform in the Bay Area from Ethiopia, like performed in that lounge. My parents used to go there. We took a bunch of the old posters from that era and put them in the restrooms. It's kind of like so it's like the real posters from this like nightclub in the 80s. And so she had this thing at night where she had this nightclub, she had a day job, and then she was approached about opening up a cafe. And I think for her, a lot of that experience was about making space for like herself and her friends and her community, because you had this wave of East Africans here. There's nowhere really to hang out. There's nowhere really for them to hang out or just be like in their natural state. So the nightclub made sense. You have this kind of place where your music, but the component of like somewhere to hang out in the daytime or some food, that's the cafe culture from Ethiopia. So I feel like a lot of when I look and hear her story, a lot of what she was doing was kind of solving for just kind of needs that herself and the community needed at that time.
Yeah. I love that because anywhere with any immigrant population, when people come, that is one of the first ways, not only to make money, but it's also one of the first ways to create community is through your arts, music, right? And the food, right? And that's a lot of what you see oftentimes immigrant businesses are, because there's a recreating, if you will, of, your comfort culture in the place where you now are. Even coming from, we're still within the country, but even coming from the East Coast to the Bay Area, there's just certain things that when I would get them, I would be importing them from other states and, going to visit and putting them in my suitcase. So it's that kind of, I'm going to try to recreate the things that are familiar to me through food and through culture in this place where I am now. And let's talk a little bit more about Fetlework. She started this in the 90s, 91. So I'm thinking about Oakland in 91. And some of this, I'm just like thinking about the account that a lot of my friends who are from here have given me. But just in any urban city in the 90s, it was a difficult time to start a business, because when I think of what's going on in urban cities in the 90s, it was a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has she ever really talked about the experience of being a business owner at that time in this place?
She does. She talks about it always just like so casually. She was like, yeah, I guess we just, cafe was next. That kind of made sense. And had this nightclub. Like all of it, it's like logically it makes sense. But the way she talks about it is so casual. Like it was so easy to do. Even like later on when she starts this like expansive distribution spice company, it's always, she approaches it like it was such an easy kind of feat to go across. So that's always kind of her attitude, was like, yeah, we needed a cafe. We need somewhere to hang out. And in Ethiopia, they were used to these kind of Italian style cafes. So boom, she teamed up with this Italian chef. They opened up the restaurant, and it was kind of this like very small like tiramisu coffee, like just really like a cafe. And they had a bunch of, I kind of remember this. I was a little kid at the time. They had all these like kind of just like plastic like patio chairs outside, and people would just be chilling outside with their coffee. But yeah, that's the way she kind of describes it. It was like, she makes it seem like it was a very easy feat, and it just felt very natural. I think she has this skill of very much a visionary and can see things like as they're happening and what they're happening. But I think she's really good at kind of taking a natural flow of what a business and what an entity wants and what's like kind of needed. And she kind of just like really easily flows into it.
That would be why she was named the 2024 Trailblazer from Black Women in Food. She won that award in 2024.
Yep, exactly.
You are describing a trailblazer.
Yep.
Yeah. And we're going to talk a little bit more in a moment about how she blazed the trail on the spice side beyond the restaurant. But one thing I wanted to ask you about, California, I've come to learn in my time here, is known for, and I'm putting up air quotes, y'all, it's adaptations of cultural food, right? But Cafe Colucci, as best I know it, I've never been to Ethiopia, but it does feel pretty authentic with what my understanding of the cuisine is. From the time it transitioned out of nightclub and came to be like just a full-scale Ethiopian restaurant to now, what made you all decide to not weave in like Ethiopian versions of things? Like you would never come here and find like a Caesar salad with, Caesar dressing that has berbere, in it, or, an Ethiopian version of a, pizza or something like that. Like this is what it is. How did you all decide we're not going to kind of get into a fusion space and we're going to keep it to the classics?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a combination of almost like, here's these kind of like staple exactly items that we really liked and appreciated from the cuisine in Ethiopia. And I do think there's a bit of the food's definitely not fusion or combined, but there's a bit of a California lens to it, which I think kind of adapted over time. Ethiopian food presentation wise has done a bunch of different presentations of the way you can like serve it and see it. I think the thing with Cafe Colucci, and it did start off like this, but it was always like very veggie, fresh, and kind of forward. Like we like to have the food all on one plate. We like to have all the things touch each other. It's like a very colorful kind of palette and landscape, which is very true to the region and the culture. But I think it really landed in California and the Bay Area. And it feels very natural because at that time, you can imagine like as it transitions from a cafe to a very traditional Ethiopian restaurant, it's a lot of vegetarian forward, it's a lot of health forward, it's a lot of like kind of conscious eaters in the Bay Area. And Ethiopian food very naturally fits into those buckets. We have very long fasting periods in Ethiopia. So for centuries, people have been eating these like vegan dishes, which funny enough is really not even a word for vegan in Ethiopian.
Really?
Yeah, in our language, we just call it fasting food. And people have been fasting for centuries. So it's been centuries of like really getting down the cuisine and making it like very filling, protein full, very different, very like flavorful. So you kind of have this like great combination of a lot of vegetarian foods. We also do protein and meat-based dishes as well. But I think that's really kind of what hit in the Bay Area with Cafe Colucci, was that we had these items that were very authentic and natural to Ethiopia. And then the California gaze just kind of like really worked with it. It was colorful, it was healthy, it was vegetarian, it's gluten-free. So the 90s and the 2000s start coming up, and then it's just, cool, it fits in.
Okay, that makes sense. You're not trying to fill the lanes, but you just end up, just by virtue of the culture of the food, filling the lanes. As you were saying that, I'm thinking back to like some friends I've come here with over my various visits, and some of them have very specific dietary needs. And they were the ones who said, well, let's go to Cafe Colucci. And I'm like, okay, because you kind of know, this is going to fit my need. I'm celiac on this, whatever. And you can find something here that's going to, not only can you find something here that would lend itself to that, but you don't feel like, we've all had that experience where you go and there's like a little separate menu that got 3 things on it, and you pick from that, but you can really engage in the fullness of the menu.
100%. Yep.
Okay. You ain't compromising.
Yeah, it's all realistic. And I think sometimes the big thing is people think the Ethiopian food is like all spicy food. And we have like mild options of it, but it's like, no, we actually do in Ethiopia have like turmeric-based sauces and turmeric-based dishes in conjunction with the spicier dishes. So it feels cool because we can satisfy everybody's palate.
Yeah.
You want it spicy? Cool. Not spicy? We got you.
Got it.
Gluten-free. We don't use nuts, so it's like it's not free. It's like all these things over the years that's just kind of become to the forefront of the dining experience, just naturally wove into it, like you were saying.
Okay. Well, y'all got the spice, and I don't necessarily mean hot, but I mean in terms of like flavor. Even walking up here, and the door was ajar because y'all were getting deliveries, but even like once I got like right up on the restaurant, boom, I could automatically smell it. And that's one of the things I'm sure many people will attest to is when you come in here, the spice is prominent. You have bottles displayed. You smell it soon as you come in. There are, I don't know if I call it sandbags. The industrial bags of it are, lining the displays on the wall. So it's one of the things that you see first and foremost. So let's move into the conversation about what I mentioned started in 2017, which is Brundo Spice Company. So first and foremost, take us through what products you all offer. What are the spices that are sold through Brundo?
Yeah, we cover definitely the base spice blends that come from Ethiopia. And it's really fun because we have these names for these spice blends. Berbere, mitmita, shuro. These are like very traditional Ethiopian spice blends. But what actually goes into these blends can really differ based on family, kind of region, like tribe. So it's really fun that there's all these different kind of interpretations of these spice blends. But those are the core things that we started first making. And when we first started doing it, it was to really build the consistency of the food in the restaurant. Because to be really consistent in the food, we really needed really consistent spices. And so that's kind of our first voyage into bringing the spices in from Ethiopia was, let me make these spice blends exactly what I want them to be to fit the cuisine here. And let me get kind of the initial, I would say there's kind of like 5 heavy hitters. There's like the top 5 Ethiopian spices.
Okay.
Berbere, mitmita, shuro. Not a spice, but very important to us is kororima, which is actually like a cardamom pod that we ground up and use. And then alicha kamem, which is a blend of the more milder spices that we use for the milder dishes. So that was kind of like the core starting 5 that we started with.
Got it. If anyone is listening who was at what's going to be a small number of people, but if you're at the last K in the Bay curated that was such a shady little statement. If you caught that, you caught it. But if you were at the if you were at the last K in the Bay curated dining event, shout out to Chef Lala, who, we imparted some of those spices into those amazing dishes that she made for us. So, I had gotten the ability to try some of them in other variations than I would typically have them if I was here in the restaurant. But I think Brundo Spice Company and what Fetlework, set out to do in creating that speaks so much to this, global supply and this pipeline of creating agricultural opportunities, creating supply chain opportunities between 2 distinct places. Can you speak a bit more to the impetus and then the growth of how the Spice Company has scaled between the time it started and now?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. When we first started the venture, the idea was, and this goes back to her just kind of like very casually solving problems as they come about. The idea was she wanted to work with a manufacturer in Ethiopia that can really make these spice blends unique and exactly what she wanted for the restaurant here. A lot of the infrastructure at the time didn't really exist in Ethiopia. So it was difficult for her to find the exact person that can produce these spices for her to bring here. So the obvious statement for her was like, let me just build it. So she started doing it herself. So she was able to get some land in a part of Ethiopia called Mojo and built the processing plant there that would house all the kind of like grinders, the storage spaces, the mixers, the drying beds that you would need to take raw ingredients and turn them into these like finished spice blends.
Yeah, because I can't remember which spice particularly I read about it. Maybe it just was talking about the production process overall, but it's, I don't want to say labor intensive because it's no more labor intensive than anything else, but there's a lot of time in drying things and, things coming to a certain maturation before you're able to incorporate them into spice blends. So You said, I didn't realize she like built out the whole production facility, which of course means people got to be there working to do it. So you're creating industry and jobs.
Yep, 100%. So I think it hit a lot of these things that she always kind of wanted to do, to return back to Ethiopia, to create kind of economic opportunity for a lot of people, to one, specifically really address rural communities in Ethiopia who have been doing this work, this kind of ancestral processes of making spices, but doing it on very small scale. So you might have a family in the countryside that's making these spices for themselves and their neighbors, who are typically their family. She's like, how can I take this and really honor and hone in this ancestral process of what they're doing, just do it a bit more on a larger scale in a time where the country itself is starting to go through some industrialization. So also, how can I not disrupt the ecosystem of Ethiopia and what these people have typically been doing for centuries, but how can I bring it into the mix of industrializing Ethiopia, being able to pay people, make it into a full-time job for people?
That's important because even when you're from a place, specifically when you're not from a place, but even when you're from a place and you're coming in and you're creating industry, I would imagine it is very important to respect the age-old traditions. Even though we are scaling and growing and, 10xing a situation, you still have to make it not feel authentic. You still have to keep the authenticity more than just feel. It has to be.
And I think that's like a really natural feeling for just all members of the diaspora, for just Black people across the world. I think we feel it here with gentrification, even in Oakland, is, things are changing, but how can we control the change? How can we keep the change amongst ourselves? And like, how can we be able to receive this change and not lose pieces of ourselves along the way?
Yeah. This came up in my conversation last year with Shane and CY from Lion Dance Cafe, because they were putting out their cookbook.
Yeah.
But it could be intimidating sometimes for people to cook with some of these spices at home, because I'm of the mindset that just because you have an ingredient and maybe a recipe, you don't have the cultural know-how, right, to be able to flex and do these very little small things that can take a dish from 3 to a 5 to a 10, right? A lot of that comes from the cultural perspective that you would get if you dined in someone's restaurant, or, you're at someone's home and their auntie was making something for you, because they have such that rich cultural knowledge. And so sometimes, and I've been guilty of this, you get this really exotic ingredient and you end up sprinkling it on some eggs, on some popcorn, right? Just this very topical use, because you don't really know how to get all up in it. Do y'all feel like we really want people to buy these spices and try their hand at recreating this at home? Or is it like, listen, take it home and adapt it to what you want to adapt it to? Make that salad dressing with it, or, impart it into your breakfast or your avocado toast or whatever it is you want to do.
Yeah, I think both of those things. And that's been one of the bigger challenges, I think, for myself and for the company in general, is the education component of the spices. We did all this kind of back work bringing them here, but then now also giving people the information on how to use the spices, and also the creative agency to be able to like make a mistake, have fun with it. You don't have to like make traditional Ethiopian food with this. You can go crazy with this and bring it to something else. And then this was a lot of the preface between us doing that chef residency program, was I also wanted to see what people did with it. Because, I'm not a huge cook, but I know the traditional ways of using these spices. I've also done the fun things of like popcorn, like eggs and avocado. Like I've done like the smaller things, but I'm like, how can I get somebody that's like really in depth and maybe a different cuisine to be able to interact with these spices and see what they can do with it too?
Yeah. It's funny. There was somewhere I went recently in Oakland and they had a hot honey latte. And I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. And I got it and it was like 90% honey, like 10% hot. And I was like, this needs some spice sprinkled on top. Right? Like these would be the kind of things I would be doing at home. Well, I wonder if I put a little bit of this, how it changes the flavor. So I suppose you can go either way. If I tried to make Dorwat at home, am I going to enjoy it the same way I enjoy it in here? No, I'm not. But I can get close.
Yeah.
Close, but no cigar, but close.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll take it. Do your best. Do what you can. we talked a little while ago about Fetlework winning the Trailblazer Award from Black Women in Food, but the restaurant, you all won an award in 2024, the Heinz Black Kitchen Initiative. You were one of a number of restaurants that won that grant. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about what that grant is for. And I also love that you use that in part to launch that chef residency series that you mentioned, which let's talk about Heinz first, and then let's talk about the residency, because that has been some of my favorite experiences here.
Yeah, thank you. I think for me it was, one, I began through the restaurant to realize how hard it was, one, to have a restaurant, and then two, harder it is even to get a start with a restaurant. So we went through this process in 2021 of leaving our former location that we had for, at that time, like 31 years. And then moving
Telegraph.
On Telegraph, yeah. And then moving into this location that we're in now. And I remember when I started doing that process, I was like, this will be easy. Like, I have a restaurant. I have some capital. Like, we'll just move it. It's much more complicated than that to get a restaurant in the Bay Area, to get a landlord to believe in you, to get to a bank to believe in you. So there's a lot of these one systemic things that block a person from being able to execute on their like dreams of having a restaurant. And I think I really saw during that process, for me, I really saw the gap of like, I know a ton of very talented Black chefs out there, but we don't see a lot of Black restaurants. Like, what is some of this gap here? And I think it's people having the opportunity to showcase their skills, or being able to have an opportunity to kind of learn some of their own like unit dynamics of how to make a restaurant profitable. And those are a lot of the questions that when I was looking for new restaurant space, landlords or people that own buildings would be asking us. They'd be like, show us your proof of concept. Like, how do we know if we give you this lease that you'll be able to make it here? Restaurants are notoriously one of the most hardest industries to get into. And it's like you have to convince a person that owns a building to believe in you, to be able to give you the lease, which I never really knew. I was like, I thought all I needed was the money.
I got my money.
Yeah, like, great, you just give it to me, right? So that was kind of the I always had that kind of in my head, was I was like, how can I maybe help somebody or be able to provide a space where somebody can try out their concept. And, you know, pop-ups at the time were very, very popular, people doing pop-ups at different locations. But a lot of the times it also was that I heard from friends that were doing pop-ups where sometimes it's hard. Some of these places want to, you know, obviously need to charge you. They have to cover their expenses, their dishwasher, their heating. And so even to be able to run a pop-up series somewhere to show a proof of concept later on when you're going to the bank or to a landlord is hard in itself. So that was kind of the idea of the chef residency series, and then finding an organization to partner with to help kind of get those funds to cover some of our base costs, so that a chef or a person can really be here presenting their concept.
Well, listen, they were here presenting their concepts. If they didn't do anything else, they did that. So shout out to Chef Selassie Doce of Elade Kitchen. That was a really good one. Right before they got up out of here, you can always come back. Silent Table was really good. My faves, Comfort Collective, they were here. And then, of course, Chef Zachary over at Left on Madeline. Yeah, I feel I've been here for. Was that all of them? Did I miss any of them?
Those were all like the formal ones. We also had like House of Vegan came and did a pop up here once.
I missed
really
that
good.
one. Okay. I almost hit them all.
Yeah.
House of Vegan. I have to catch you on the next one.
Really good.
Yeah, but even just calling those off, Left on Madeline really was just like dialing down on Louisiana food culture, and Comfort Collective has that Southern influence. Silent Table has that like Afro-Caribbean influence, and Elade Kitchen, West Africa. So all of these, they just dial down on the representation of Black foodways in a very distinct way. Good times.
Yeah.
If you missed it, I'm sorry. I want to talk quickly about your beverage program, because that also is very reflective of the culture in terms of ingredients and how and where you source your wines and spirits.
Yeah, and it's funny, like, both these things so naturally kind of intertwined also in the Spice Company. So all those lovely chefs you just mentioned were like also using our spices to create dishes and was exposing myself to like the different ways Ethiopian spices can be used in these dishes. And it was fun as I would just give them, like, here, come grab anything you want. And then like they would come back with all these like really cool concepts of using the spices. But yeah, I felt very similar about when we started building out a beverage program here was one, we can really focus, it's like we all we got, like we can really focus a beverage program towards like Black and African diasporic centered products and really put that at the forefront, and then also be able to showcase some of the spices in there too. So working with Spearhead Spirits, Hezo over there, Bayab Gin, Vusa Vodka. They have so many different brands now. They also have a whiskey line, but all of these things that are based out of South Africa that are coming here, that are Black owned, that we're able to like really mix with some of our spices and create a really cool beverage program with them. And that even goes for wines too, with Cherio Wines, Brown Estates, all these cool Black owned wineries that we have around us, and then even nationally around here too. So it became really cool. I was like, it's really cool to see the kind of ecosystem around Black craft making, to be able to incorporate all of these things, and then also to have an ethos that we support all of these companies and interweave some of our spices that we bring from Ethiopia.
It's to this day, it's the espresso. I have my share of espresso martinis most places I go. This still is holding the number one spot.
Yes.
It's damn good.
Thank you.
It's the best. I'm not just saying that. Talk a little bit more about the marketing of this kind of restaurant. How, have you been intentional about conveying and packaging the story of this culture in a way that stands out? Because we talked earlier about the fact that there are a lot of restaurants in the Bay, and there's a good handful of Ethiopian restaurants. So, you all seem to put this together in a way where it really stands out to people. But was that intentional, or are you just like focus on being really good at what we do and hope that that's the effect?
Yes, there maybe wasn't a lot of intention around it. I think I kind of following Fetlework's footsteps. I was building something kind of for myself. So I love Ethiopian restaurants. There's so many good ones here, but I was like, what if we took it up a notch and kind of made a restaurant that's like cool to kick it at? Like you had cool cocktails. Like I have to, so often if I want to bring my friends to a nice restaurant to eat and I want cocktails, I want full service, it ends up being other cuisines. And I was like, how can I bring that to like my own? Like how can I have somewhere that I'd want to kick it at with my friends and get African-based cocktails with African spirits in them, and desserts with Ethiopian spices, but still have like a very traditional Ethiopian meal, but also presented in a way where there's some education around it. So like what you were mentioning before, when you come into the space, you physically see big spice bags that we're bringing in from Ethiopia. You're seeing some spices kind of inside the tables where we tell you about the spices.
I love that. Yes, I forgot to mention that. That's dope.
And then we have pictures of the processing plant here. So it kind of started off kind of natural, where I was like, all right, I gotta, tell people about the spices. I gotta like let them know what we're doing here. I kind of have to like, hit them at every angle. They're coming in, they're smelling spices, they're seeing the food, they're seeing spices, there's information about how to make the spices, how to make food with the spices. So it kind of was all these kind of like raw elements, and then it was really Jess. Shout out to Jess, who
what
came
up, Jess?
in. Jess kind of like came in as like a fractional marketing person who comes from a strong marketing background, and was able to take all of these kind of like raw just stuff I had going around, and was able to like really package it into cohesive, like, okay, this is what you're doing.
Yes.
You're bringing this kind of long-standing cuisine in the Bay Area and kind of bringing some more clarity around what it is, exactly what you're eating, exactly how it's processed, exactly all the love and all the energy and the effort that goes into these things. And then also, doing our best to make it a very Black-centric space in terms of the products and the consumption.
Yeah. I mean, you can't help but be kind of enveloped into the culture of it when you come in here. Like you said, it's on the wall. It's physically in the tables. If you're just going to sit by yourself and look down at the table,
Yeah.
if you're sitting at the right table, you're going to look down into information, right? And actual physical spices that are inlaid into the table. And then you broaden that out just a little bit. When you walk in the door, you have, like a cookbook selection from a lot of the Black authors who have, some of the popular cookbooks that are out. So I really do feel like there is so much intentionality, and maybe it's grown to be that way, but of curating a space that if you're here, maybe just coming to get a drink. I don't know why you would do that, but if you're just coming, at a high level or you're going deep, you are almost made to engage at a deep level with the culture.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I like how you put that. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. I love it. The James Beard Award nominations were recently announced. And, we do see this continuing increase of a growing recognition of immigrant foodways on the main stage, right? From fine dining all the way to, casual, fast casual. But I think about communities like Minneapolis, everything that just has recently gone on there, particularly the devastation around immigrant populations. And I'm sure that hits business structure, which of course hits restaurants. What do you think is the key to kind of celebrating these cultural moments where we're getting more and more space increasingly on the quote unquote main stage, while still holding space for all of the reparative things that still need to happen?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with staying resilient, just kind of resilience through all of these things that are affecting us in very real ways. I think it's important for us to, continue to have goals in mind and continue to keep working forward in the things that we want, but also having the space to realize, destruction and sadness that's happening to our communities, but just also not stopping because of that. I think a lot of that is engineered to slow us down or to make us stop. And a lot of our history in the U.S. and, in general has been around resilience. Like, no matter what, we're going to be resilient. We're going to keep pushing through here. So I really feel like some of that spirit where it's not that we're ignoring or not making space for being able to have sadness and being, sad about destruction of our communities, but being able to keep continuing and going forward.
All right, you heard it. Keep going.
Yes.
Yeah. Y'all deal a lot in community support in the culinary space. As we record this right now, it's April. Spring and summer is right at our door. Is there any sneak peek you can give us on what we can expect? Y'all have that beautiful patio in the back. What can we expect from Cafe Colucci in the way of events this spring and summer?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Definitely going to be as poppin' as always. We're kind of getting ready. we're getting ready for the season to start. But definitely a lot of pop-ups. You might see us at a good amount of events. The last 2 years, we brought our cocktail program to Afrobeats at the Lake. So being able to be there and to celebrate the summer with like Afrobeats artists and Afrobeats music. So you're gonna see a lot of that again this summer. I mean, the summertime in the Bay Area is definitely magical. It's definitely special. We're definitely outside. So we're going to be doing a lot more of that.
Yes. Bring those Awaze barbecue tips with you. That was good. If you missed really barbecue without borders, that was good.
That was really cool. Yeah, that was a fun one.
Yeah, love that. Listen, thank you so much for doing this. I love the space y'all hold in the community. I'm going to give you a fun fact. The As Told By podcast kind of started here. Do you want to know why? When I first conceived the podcast, and originally it was going to be a video series that would take place at different restaurants around the Bay. And I would interview someone over a meal, and then it would be, video recorded as it was happening. And I sat down with one of my friends. Shout out to Lex from Let's Bubble Productions. But I sat down with my friend Lex because I wanted him to shoot it for me. And we came here, and I was like, come on, I'm going to take you to lunch and run this project by you. And this was before y'all were here. It was Soul Slice. And we sat right there and we had this complete conversation and laid everything out. And it was so cost prohibitive and ridiculous. Now I'm thinking back to it. I'm like, what you think this is, Netflix? I had to scale it way back, as you can tell. I had to scale it way back, but that was like the first real concrete conversation I had as I was like building out what this was going to be. So it's always good to come back here and look at that seed and kind of remember where this started. Little things turn into big things. And y'all have turned this into a big thing in Oakland. Number 82 today. Look, I'm gonna go forecast. You're gonna be number 70 in 2027.
Yes.
Let's
Put it out
reach for
there.
that.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, anything's possible. Tell people where they can find out more about Cafe Colucci and Brundo Spice Company.
Yeah, you can visit us online, websites, cafecolucci.com, brundo.com, social media, we're big on Instagram, at Brundo Spices on Instagram, and at Cafe Colucci on Instagram as well.
Okay. I'll make sure I include all of that with the show notes. I bought groceries yesterday, but I feel like I've been sitting up in here now for a little while and smelling things. So I might have to spin the block and come back for dinner tonight.
Yeah.
We'll see. I want to go home and make my food, but I also want to come in and enjoy what I've been smelling. Thank you so much for joining me today for the episode. If you want to keep up with me in between episodes, you can find me at kayinthebay.com or on Instagram at heykayinthebay. That has been this week's episode of the As Told by podcast from Cafe Colucci in Oakland. I'll see y'all on the next episode.